Professor Heidi Lewis, thank you so much for your time. Before we get into the interview, I just would like you to give us a brief overview of who you are, where you work, what your discipline is, and how you decided to come to Berlin.
Well, thank you for doing this interview. I'm so glad that you and I had a chance to connect. We'll talk more about that, I know, later, but so I'll tell you a little bit about me. So I'm an assistant professor of feminist and gender studies at Colorado College in Colorado Springs. And in addition to being a faculty member in what we call FGS, I'm also a core faculty member of the Race and Ethnic Studies program here. And I teach and do research in the areas of course, feminism, gender and sexuality, race and ethnicity, but more specifically critical race theory, critical whiteness studies, and I'm always doing work in the area of media and pop culture. That's really my sort of most comfortable place to do what I do. So I teach a critical media studies course. I often find myself being asked to talk to people about the media. So that's a little bit about my research and my teaching. And as far as Berlin, you know, a colleague and I were, you know, talking a couple years ago, and I told her that I was looking for conferences, academic professional conferences that were outside of the United States, because I'd done a ton of conferences here, and I still do and will still, but I wanted to expand my sort of transnational network. So I found the Society for the Multi-Ethnic Study of the, let me get this right, of Europe and the Americas. So the acronym is MESEA, even though it's Society for Multi-Ethnic Studies. And they were having a conference in Barcelona 2 years ago. So we thought, oh, you know, we should teach a class. She had never taught abroad. I had never taught abroad. And so we said we were going to teach a class here, but then we were going to whisk students off to this conference and come back. And students were just not having it because it was as expensive to go just for that couple days as it would be for them to do a whole course abroad. So after that, I went to the dean of summer sessions at the time, and I said, look, where did we go wrong? Like, what could we do to really make this go? I really want to do this. And so he talked to me, and he said, well, where do you want to go? And I said, shoot, I don't even know, like, where I don't. So then I went back, and that same conference was in Germany this past summer. And I said, Germany. Oh, my gosh, Audre Lorde, Berlin. Germany, that's it. I'm going to teach this class in Berlin because of Audre Lorde. And people do ask me that all the time, why Berlin? And people in the struggle, it's frustrating when they ask me that because it tells me that they don't know about the time Audre Lorde spent in Berlin predominantly annually for the last, 8 years of her life, and also Du Bois. So I thought, well, then that tells me that there's a need to keep those networks alive, not just for the research and the teaching, but also for the struggle. And I wanted to take students, and I wanted to share with students, like I do here, the things that I'm interested in. And so that's really why I went to Berlin. I wrote a proposal. The course was approved. I'm thankful to work at an institution that is supportive of innovation in that way. First time Feminist and Gender Studies has had a course abroad. So that was huge for me. I had 9 students. That was huge. 3 young women of color, 3 black women, 3 international students, and 3 white women. That was huge for me. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up in Berlin is Audre. It all comes back to the Lord.
I wanted to ask you also a little bit. You contacted me via the BDG as a Black Diaspora and Germany Scholars Network, a Young Scholars Network, which is funded by the Deutsche Forschungsgesellschaft. And how did you find us? Were you given a tip, or did you just Google us, or how did that come about?
So that same dean who was really supportive of me said, look, there's a fund available. You apply for some money, we'll give you money to go there and connect with people, you know, look at apartments, get a feel for the area, and da-da-da-da. So I said, okay, well, how do I do that? Now, I had met Natasha Kelly, who's a scholar in Berlin. she and I had connected in Barcelona at that conference that I told you about. So, but I didn't want to sort of, you know, ask her to do the majority of the work for my class. So I got real familiar with Google in the months leading up to last November when I first came to visit. So much so that now Google automatically translates any German to English. So much so that I'll send people websites and they'll say, but it's in German. I'm like, oh, because my computer just translates it already. But I got on, and I mean, I must have had a list, and I do this with my scholarly project too. I'll come up with a long list of search terms that I think will yield the kind of material that would make sense for any project, and I did the same for this. So I had search terms like African American and German, or African American and Berlin, Black and Berlin, Black and German, Black and women, Black and feminist and German. So I just had a list of search terms, and I just started to use those search terms in Google, and that's how I came across the network. And once I found that, I thought, well, if this isn't a ready-made, you know, to meet list, I don't know what is. So it was really helpful that the network even existed for someone like me, who, you know, I had a connection there, but I didn't want to burden her with, oh, you know, help me with this, help me with that, help me with this. I'm real independent, and I don't like when people do that to me. So I wanted to take initiative and reach out, and that's how I found you. And the majority of people that I reached out to were really supportive, really helpful. And so, I mean, I have to say thanks to the BDG for even creating something like this for people like me and throughout the world, especially in Germany, to find like-minded, you know, similar and different people that are interested in the same things, because it was a lifesaver for me.
Wow, wow, that's great, that's great. In the beginning of our conversation, you talked about, you know, it all was, you know, put together by the Lord, by Audre Lorde. I'd like to ask a couple of questions specifically about Audre and your connection with her, and I wanted to hear from you. You talked a little bit about what prompted you to come to Berlin and to explore the spaces where Audre lived and taught and met people that was very much part of her, as Dagmar calls the Berliner years, or the Berlin years. What's stuck in your mind from your 3 or 4 weeks of being here in Berlin this year? Also connection to Audre Lorde. What stood out the most for you? Could you talk about that?
Yeah, the thing that stuck out the most to me, that's relevant also to Audre Lorde's time in Berlin, is the sheer number or lack thereof of Black folks in Berlin. Berlin is a major city. I mean, you know, and people know that, but I don't know if they know that, that don't live in Germany or aren't familiar with Germany. When my husband and I were there in November, we went to the movies, and the Hunger Games Catching Fire premiere was happening there. Like, there was, you know, Jennifer Lawrence and all these people, and so I mean, it's a happening city, and so it's shocking that there are about as many Black people in Berlin as there probably are in Colorado Springs. I know I'm wrong about the numbers, but it feels that way. In fact, it feels like there are less in Berlin. And so when I was thinking about Audre, because, you know, she, in collaboration with, you know, folks in Berlin, you know, that she went around the city trying to find Black people, Black women, to get people together, to share their stories, to write their stories, to write themselves and speak themselves into existence, because of, you know, the ways in which women of color, Black women especially, for a particular set of reasons, felt invisible. I mean, you know, this is why Ika, I'm sure, named her book what she did. And so I was thinking to myself, how easy was it for me to get on a computer and get on Google and just start typing Black in German, Black in Berlin, Black. They had to walk around and just see where the Black people were and give a flyer. Hi, please come to the meeting. Thank you. And oh, I know a Black woman lives there. Let's put a note in her box. And it just unbelievable to me what that must have been like in the late 70s, in the 80s, for for Black folk to be so few and far between and so spread out that one would literally have to walk around with a pamphlet. That's the thing that stuck out to me. Every time I would get on the train or get off the train, or every time I would see a Black person, I would say, oh my gosh, you know, if this was back in the day and I was with Audre Lorde, we'd be passing out flowers. Hey, excuse me, hello. And thank goodness that they did, because now there is, you know, the BDG. Now there are networks and things like that. But I can't imagine what it would be like.
ISD, ADEFRA,
Yes.
the Black Germans have their own networks also.
Yes. You know, Yasmin Edding of ADEFRA actually sent me a picture of one of the first flyers that they had that they were passing around, and it was just it was a spiritual moment for me, because I mean, I grew up in the United States, in Ohio, so in Northeast Ohio. So, you know, I mean, I grew up thinking that my city was like half Black, but I think that's because, you know, my family and you're around people, so it's not half Black. But even that is nowhere, it's not comparable to the experiences of Black Germans, even in its, and the reason I keep saying Berlin is a happening city is because if Black Germans are so few and far between in the city, what must it have been like in rural Germany? And so I don't think anyone in the United States knows that feeling. No one. I mean, even in, you know, places like Grinnell, Iowa, even though we have like the smallest amount of time in the media, or it's the most denigrating kind, we see Black people more than Black Germans saw Black people growing up in the same time period. And that is the thing that I will never forget.
Can you tell me a little bit about what aspects of the Black German community or communities have you explored, or were you able to explore in that short amount of time that you were here? I mean, you came in November to scout out things and to meet people and set up dates and such, but then your actual teaching time when you were here in May, from end of May to mid-June, what I know it was a short amount of time, but what aspects of the Black community were you able to have a look at while you were here?
You know, I'll say throughout our time, we would have sessions with people, and students would be interested in, you know, and I was interested in hearing people talk about what it was like to grow up, you know, Black in Germany and, you know, including Berlin. Because the students had read Ika's book, they read Farbe Bekennen, they'd shown Our Colors, they'd read as much as I could possibly find in terms of narrative and scholarship. And so they were really, they had a strong desire to hear more about that, and so did I. And so, you know, they would often ask, you know, well, what's it like now, you know, for children to grow up? And a lot of people talked about the ESD and how that network provides a space for Black children to, you know, fellowship and play together and see one another. And people kept mentioning EOTO, each one teach one, EOTO, each one teach one. And I kept saying yes, because I'm so glad to hear people mention this, because we're going to meet with Daniel, who works at EOTO, you know, soon. And so we went to EOTO, and it's just a very powerful and important project for an NGO to work on improving the life of Black German kids. You know, I told Daniel that I was going to send him a ton of books with Black children in it so that the children can see these books, because I mean, that meant a lot to me, as I didn't have that when I was little, but my kids did. And it means a lot to see yourself in spaces like, you know, books, where, you know, we associate so much about reading with intelligence, and, you know, to see yourself in that space, to see your
positive spaces or positive images.
Right. You know what I mean? A space where your stories are being told. You know what I mean? Toni Morrison says, if you don't see, you know, yourself in a space, write it in. You know, Audre Lorde was of the same philosophy, write it. So to see that being written is important. So that part of the Black German community was powerful for me, you know, to have so many people recommend that, and to know that I had, because of my connection with Sharon O'Toole, who used to be really involved with EOTO. Because of her, I connected with Daniel, and Daniel was gracious enough to meet with the students, and so it was just nice when people would say meet with them, and I could say we are, and to have people like you or you know, Katarina Oguntoye say things like you know, you connected with everybody. Like there's a couple people that I think you need to connect with next time. But I was glad to hear people recommend each other to me. You know what I mean? Because it just showed that, I mean, everybody doesn't have to get along. Everybody doesn't have to be best friends, but to recognize and respect each other's work enough to say, Heidi, you should connect with, you know, did you talk to Joliba? Did you get with the DIFRA? Did you, you know, it was really good. So that, I'm, you know, Black Women's Networks, DIFRA, I met, we talked to you, so we got to go to Birkenwerder and do that train ride and hear you speak about your work. I mean, we did as much as I wrote a blog about it, the end of the trip. I said my normal classes are about 58 hours. This one was about 62. Like, I tried to pack so much stuff in because, and that's telling that I was able to do so much. So it's happening. You can't do everything in Berlin. If you went to every event in Berlin that was about racism or sexism or post-colonial, that's all you would do all day is go to an event. And that was because even though the number of Black folks is smaller than it is here, they're doing way more than we are here, like in the Colorado Springs, I'm saying. And that's an indictment to me. I mean, they're doing it all. I mean, they're talking about everything. They're bringing up everything. So so as far as the Black German community, I was happy to see that they were interconnected. Everybody knew each other, and we're so willing to share with me. You know, like, oh, you should talk to this person. You should talk to that person. You might not have had them for your class, but let's have dinner so that next time Kwesi can, you know, speak with the students. We did the tour with Josie Apraku, the African vetting. And everybody was telling me, you got to do that tour. And I'm like, we did that tour. You know? So it was good to be able to say, wow, I'm hitting what I need to be hitting for the students and for myself, but also for people to say, hey, don't worry, you didn't get in touch with this person this time. I'm gonna email, you know, the person with you, and then you all connect, and next time. So I see a lot of interconnectedness that I really appreciate.
That's great. That's great. You said a lot, and you also mentioned that you felt that in some terms, that more was going on here in terms of dealing with or you know, debating the issues or combating the issues of racism, sexism, the whole post-colonial thing. My next question has to do with in your opinion, what would you say are some of the commonalities? What are some of the differences that you see between the Black German community and perhaps the African American community within your working sphere? I mean, we cannot compare the communities with the entire United States or the community that you met here in Berlin with the rest of Germany. But for example, where you're living in Colorado Springs or areas where you lived most of your life or had contact or were active or were teaching or doing research, what are some of the commonalities that really stand out in your mind? And maybe you want to mention also one or two stark differences.
You know, I hope I don't, if I deviate too far from the question, I don't think I will, but I'm worried about that. Reel me back in, but
okay,
please. But one of the things that I want to say carefully and gently is that I think due to the fact that, for instance, if I could just focus on Black women for a moment, self-identified, I think due to, you know, I was telling someone there, when I teach Black feminist theory, of course I don't only teach writing that is written by self-identified feminists. So you go back to the 1800s, you know what I mean, and teach, you know, you know, Frances Harper, and I could just go back to enslaved Black women's narratives. There is none of that in Germany. And so, for instance, Ika's book, which I think is at my house now, but what is that written, 1980, 90 something?
It was in the mid-90s or early 90s, I believe. Mid-90s, yeah.
Mid-90s, and that is almost, that and Farber McKinnon is almost the beginning of the Black woman's narrative being written, read, and shared in, you know, larger spaces. And so a lot of the conversations, not a lot, some of the conversations that I not just participated in, but just listened to, sounded a lot like Black feminist, U.S. Black feminist conversations from the 80s.
Can you name an example?
For instance, like what it means to be a Black woman. I almost think we here in the States need to maybe revisit that a little bit, because I think we've taken for granted that we know what that means. You know what I mean now? Because we had, I mean, of course, you know, Berlin had Audre Lorde too, right? We had Audre Lorde, everybody. And just the fact that it means so much, like Daima of the Witness series, like how much it means for people in Germany to have a book with the faces of Black women in it and the narrative of Black women in it is just like, wow. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I'm excited because it's happening. It's already happening. Now, the other thing is that I felt like, and I'm not, you know, I think that the conversations around post-colonialism that are happening in Berlin are like gone out of here. Like I was just mind blown, you know, thinking it's almost like some organizations I noticed were really interested in having a conversation about post-colonialism, and some were really interested in having a conversation about Black. And I don't know if the two are intermingling or as interconnected as they either want to be or need to be. I don't know. But it seemed like there was either a focus on Black or either a focus on post-colonialism, transnationalism. And I see that here too. Like I said, you know what I mean? Like I said, in Black intellectual circles, people asked why Berlin. So if they're asking why Berlin, they can't be familiar with Audre Lorde's legacy there or Du Bois's, because anybody who did was like, oh, of course you're going to Berlin. Like, of course Heidi is going to Berlin. So, you know, so I see that too, where there's a particular set of names of people who move in Black, in intellectual circles that are focused on Black, and there's a different set of names for people in the States who move in intellectual circles that are focused on post-colonialism and transnational thinking. A couple of names overlap, but I don't see it. And so I'm saying that that's something that is similar, is that there isn't, I don't think, and if I'm wrong, somebody please send me an email and tell me all about it, because I just don't think that there's the kind of interconnectedness that we need. And people keep saying, you know, to me, well, don't you think that we need to work more with white people in order to progress racially, because, you know, they're the ones doing the oppressing? And I'm not knocking that argument per se, but I would like to try to expand our transnational thinking and networking first and try that, because I think that might be, you know, that could very well be why, you know, things are a little slower to change, because we're just not doing a good job, I don't think. Or maybe it's just me, and maybe I'm not doing a good job, and I'll own that. You know what I mean?
Just to be clear, is this a suggestion you're making from the side of the United States, or as it pertains to the side of Germany?
I think both.
For both, okay.
I think both. I think, you know, for instance, okay, you have the Ori Jalo initiative that is alive and well. They're going to do, you know, they're going back to court, I think, next month about this case. How in the hell do we not know about that? If I say Ori Jalo in the United States, no one is going to know what I'm talking about. And it isn't the same thing, but the ways in which Black folks are so concerned about police brutality, especially as it pertains to Black men, there is no reason why we shouldn't be linked up arm in arm across the world, because it's happening everywhere. You know, the police aren't just killing Black men in the United States. And you know, and it was so great. Nadine Saeed, who's a big part of the Ori Jalo initiative, she spoke with my students about the case, but then she also invited me over to their space, and we did a similar thing that you and I are doing. We were talking, and you know, it was being recorded about, and then, you know, I talked about Trayvon, and you know, they talked about Ori Jalo, I talked about Marissa Anderson, they talked about Christy Schwanbeck, you know what I mean? So that is not and I'm not tooting my own horn, but that, I think, needs to happen more on both sides.
Okay.
You know, like, there's, like, the name Ori Jalo should ring bells around the world, as should Trayvon Martin, Marissa Alexander, Christy Schwanbeck. You know, why is this not? So I mean, and I'm not shaming any side. I'm just saying I think we all need to do a better job of knowing each other better.
I have to say, this whole Trayvon Martin case has been, much attention was given from the Black German community, and as far as I was able to ascertain from being part of these small little Facebook groups, where a lot of Black Germans are using Trayvon Martin's picture as their profile. So there are discussions going on. I wouldn't say that I mean, Trayvon Martin, to some degree, the case was also portrayed in the news here, in the German media also. And yes, it was portrayed in the German media here too.
No, I mean, because we talked about that, but, like, did they slant it toward how did they slant it?
Well, since I don't watch television,
no, I know.
I can't make comments about that, but I noticed on online media that I was looking at, that I saw that this whole issue was coming up with Trayvon Martin, and in terms of being slanted, I think here it was just presented as an issue, you know, problem in the United States.
Yeah.
In terms of in-depth dealing with it, that I did not see. But within in some of the closed groups on Facebook from the Black German community, there was a lot being discussed about it. So it was an issue here, and this idea of racial profiling, which also happens here in Germany too. There are major connections there, and this takes me to the next question, because I think you're limited on time. What I wanted to ask you was, of course, the main topic of your course dealt with Black feminism and from a transnational perspective. And the spaces and works that you've explored with your students have been gendered female primarily. And while the arena of Black feminism has been dominated almost exclusively by Black women, what are some of your observations regarding Black males here in Germany?
Well, I do remember this question. I actually, you know, this might be a good time to talk about the changing of the course title, which was something that you were really instrumental in helping me think about when we were visiting with you. I know you probably remember this, but the students you allowed us the time to just break and eat and chill. And we came up with a new name. Really, I think you said it or a student said it, and then I kind of thought, oh my goodness, that should be the name of the course. And it was, you know, Hidden Spaces, Hidden Narratives, Intersectionality Studies in Berlin, because while the focus primarily was on Black women and feminism, and I don't think that's going to change at all. Like, the text we read, the people we connect with won't change drastically, but that title will more accurately reflect what we actually did in the course, because of course we talked about a lot of things that weren't exclusively affecting Black women, like police brutality and racial profiling. And as far as Black men, I really didn't connect with that many there. I mean, I've seen and met, but I mean officially, formally in the course space. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping to do that more. But for instance, Kwesi, I had been told I should meet and finally did. Celine had a dinner at her house and he came. And so of course, we talked and I met his wife on a humbug at Werkstatt.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
Yeah, I was there with someone else, and she knew the person, and then she said her name, and I thought, oh, Sandrine, and so it was just that kind of stuff was happening all the time, and it was fabulous. But I actually think that your question, I'm so glad you asked it, because what it does is it it causes me to think more deliberately about that as I move forward, and to ask that question that you asked me, sort of what is the role of Black men in the struggle, not necessarily just about feminism, but that too, but also about transnational discourses, post-colonial discourses. Of course, we met with Daniel from Each One Teach One. He's Black, German. So that's a deficit that I need to address moving forward, because I did think I was going to focus primarily on Black women, and then things just spiraling out of control. And then I would find out about these organizations like Reach Out Berlin with Biplab Basu, who's been doing work with police brutality and profiling for over 30 years, and I just couldn't not meet them. And now moving forward, I want to definitely make that an issue, because, I think that's also an important ask too, how we are also connected across genders. And the Les Migras, a Black trans organization, I met a member, but I didn't get to, have them speak with the students. I'm definitely going to do that, because, there's some interesting work going on in Berlin regarding the trans, something that here in the United States we're also dealing with in a more public way than ever before with, the emergence of Janet Mock, Laverne Cox. So we're starting to, so I think that's one of the areas where we can maybe feel like babies together is, how are we building relationships with the trans community, or how are we not? How are we, how is our language, our way of talking about, our way of addressing, our theorizing about trans people perpetuating oppression in ways you may not know. For instance, like asking, oh, when did you become a girl? People don't even know that is a very sort of oppressive way of asking a trans person about their gender. And so I think that's a rookie area that we all could stand to come together on. But because, I just want to also clarify too about the Trayvon Orijalo thing. I think that happens more with us actually than in Germany. I think we are less likely to know about what's going on in Germany than Germans are with us.
Well, that's the media coverage in the United States. Whenever I go home to visit my family, I just see that it's very one-sided and very very shallow in terms of international coverage. Even CNN, which claims to have an international perspective. Europeans always know much more about what's happening in the United States than vice versa. So,
And thank God, I love that you mentioned social media, because I think that's one way that we've sort of circumvented that narrow focus in the media is by, like I have my profile picture up for the refugees in Berlin, and people are like, what is that? And I'm like, okay, here's a link. You need to read this or you need to watch this. Here's a YouTube channel. Vicky Jones's trans media work is really helpful, because people who don't like to read or who don't have a lot of time to read or make a lot of time to read, she's got these videos and so and for instance, I think we've got to do that. We have to start connecting the experiences of refugees everywhere. Not like Audre Lorde said, not on the basis of it's the same, but because it's different. For instance, when the students and I went to the Antonio Amadeo Foundation.
Yes.
Heike Radvan spoke about how the organization had shifted a little bit from like focusing on the perpetrator to the victim.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing something unique happen in the United States, where I see some organizations shift and focus from the victim to the perpetrator. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're having conversations now with rapists.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I'm thinking, if one of us used to be at point A and now we're moving toward B, and the other of us used to be at point B and now we're moving toward A, it might make sense to have a conversation, because maybe there are things about point B that they could tell us, or point A that we could tell. You know what I mean? Like there's just like I think in the States, we may be reinventing the wheel. I don't know, but if there are other organizations throughout the world who have been through what we are about to go through, we could find out, we could learn from them, they could learn from us. But you know, the U.S. always takes this sort of really imperialist, hegemonic stance of like, let us tell you how to fix.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, let us, you know, I actually had somebody ask me, what did they learn from you in Berlin? I really didn't go there to teach Berliners anything, you know what I mean? Even though I did give the talk, but I was asked. I had no intentions on giving a talk at all. Mm-hmm. I was asked. Of course, I obliged because I love to talk and I love what I do. But this idea that like I went to like share, it's like I went to share, but not to sort of like. And you know what else I wanted to say, too, about Black feminism? I said to somebody, because, I experienced a little pushback when I came, and I asked if Audre Lorde had.
Pushback from us or pushback from the U.S.?
From Germans, because it was like,
Why are Black Germans, if I may ask?
Black, because it was like, who is that and what is she doing? You know,
who is that? Who are you?
Yeah, who am I and what do I want? What am I coming over here? And I mean, I'm American. I'm Black, but I'm American. See, this is the thing. Like, I felt so American in Berlin, for better or worse. I'm an American through and through and through. I felt that. I also felt really Black, but because it's so white. But I understood the skepticism. I mean, who is this person? What do they want from us? What does she want from us? What is she trying to do? Mm-hmm. And then I have a white name. So
I was going to say your name didn't help.
And I've been Heidi for 32 years, so I didn't even think about that until somebody was like, "We thought you were white."
Yes.
Oh.
Lots of people did. Yes.
But
and also, I mean,
yeah. Yeah, but you were going to say something. I'm so sorry.
Well, maybe, perhaps when you sent around, when you did your inquiries, maybe you should have, attached a little photo of yourself in the mail, something like that. I know that sounds really ridiculous, but
I'm serious.
Many more doors would have opened to you had you done that.
I'm telling you, and certain people were very honest with me about that, and said, I thought you were white, and when I found out you were Black, then I decided to, email you back. And the thing about it is I understand that. I mean, I'm an outsider coming into this community asking for stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a Black American, so I'm not surprised that bothered people. You know what I mean? Like, and that's why I tried to be really, really careful to articulate that I was never coming with the intent to educate Berliners about anything of themselves. I can teach about what I know, but I tried to position myself as someone who was learning and who wanted to build relationships, lifelong relationships, and not just relationships about the work, just relationships. Like, I feel like you and I have gotten close. We talk about our families, we talk about things that aren't related to the work. Celine and I, we're friends now. Yeah. We hung out. We purposefully spent time together that wasn't about class. You know what I mean? Because we liked to be around each other. But still, some people needed to see me and hear it from me, and hear me. Someone asked, what does she think she knows about black women in Berlin? And had the person asked me at the time, I would have said absolutely nothing, or what I read in the books, I know about black feminism in the States. I know about transnational feminist theory. I'm trying to build relationships and learn also. So yeah, the pushback from there is indicative of how fragile, not in a negative way, but how delicate the black German community is, because these are people who were, I actually met, the students that I met, and these people, young women who were snatched away from their families and placed in orphanages across the country in the name of protecting them. People who were snatched from their black fathers, weren't allowed to go. These are people whose lives were shattered by intruders. So far be it for me to think everybody was just going to, yes, please, yes, come intrude the space. So I was never offended by it, but it is something worth pointing out, because I think that, and now I get to have an opportunity to talk about a personal experience with students, because some of our students are very well traveled and they go in these communities and they don't understand why people don't want them there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's like, because they don't want you there. Mm-hmm. Now I get to tell them, hey, I've been in a space where I wasn't necessarily wanted. You know what I mean? They're if you're genuine, it could come, and maybe it never will. There could be somebody 20 years from now who's like, I'm not messing with her. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Audre went through it too, I learned. Some people, well, she could come here and tell us about how to write. So
this is a nice way to take this. I want to segue into a topic that really is very important to me, and it's also the topic of a piece I'm writing for our Day F Gay publication, and it deals with the aspect of the matrilineal diaspora. And what I find really, really fascinating is, this concept of matrilineal diaspora is not something that I invented. It came from Chinosaur, and is often been used in context with literature and things like that. But I see a different aspect there. I see an aspect in terms of looking about the development and evolution of black feminism here in Germany, with Audre Lorde at the Matrix, and this whole matrilineal heritage, how it's been passed on to women not only in Germany but in Switzerland and in other European countries, the UK as well. And so what I wanted to ask you was, Audre Lorde and other influential black women, we would refer to them as foremothers, and they've given us guidance and inspiration. And I wanted to say, tell me a little bit about, for example, what was done with the Feminist Wire, where we really saw this whole matrilineal, these matrilineal connections, as Audre is quasi like, I would say, I refer to her as the godmother of the Black German movement, Black German feminist movement. And I would say she was really positioned with the Feminist Wire Forum this year as the center. And then, with all these little satellites from all over the world, entries coming talking about Audre. So I wanted to hear from you. How do you see this aspect of matrilineal heritage in terms of Audre Lorde, and also perhaps in connection with your connection to us? If you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yes, and I'll say, I guess you could say, I wouldn't say a co-editor on the forum. I was more of an assistant to the forum. Aisha Simmons, who you know now, who I'm so glad that you do.
Because of you.
I'm glad. I love it. She is amazing, and she really wanted to honor Audre Lorde. And, of course, who in the world was going to argue with that? I think for us who have studied her work and who teach her work and who try to live through her work, have really sort of been disappointed by how her legacy has been boiled down to the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house, and then people misinterpret it half the time anyway, and people don't know her work on difference. People don't know her work on, the erotic, the uses of anger. I mean, when I could go on. I'm not going to do it. But I will say that in, you know, people talk about, there's been a lot of re-emerging tensions between black and white feminists in the United States over the past decade, few decades. But recently, given social media's popularity, it's been resurfacing to the point that even popular audiences know. I have a cousin who doesn't study feminism at all. She's like, so is there a thing between the whites and the black feminists? I'm like, shit, yeah. but and I wonder sometimes if they've ever read Audre's letter to Mary Daly. I mean, sometimes I'm like, y'all ain't doing nothing new. This argument is not new. This debate is not new. Nothing is new. And so I was really proud to be a part of the forum because the forum honored her life, her work, her legacy, and her relationships globally, her influence globally. And so now whenever I, you know, if I'm doing something on the web and I use her name, I link it to the forum now, something. Either Aisha's introduction or her conclusion, which has a hyperlinked index of all the pieces that were written. There's pictures. I mean, for a popular audience, right? Because, I mean, people would say, you know, her influence has been kept, you know, with, I guess you could say, like, kept within academic circles. But I wonder because I'll just for funsies, I'll quote something from the uses of anger and I'll act like I said it and people will get pissed off. It's my favorite pastime activity is to just quote it and act like it's me and just see what people say. And they're like, well, actually, I think da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, whoa. Not to say you can't disagree with Audre Lorde, but these are people who don't even know that's Audre Lorde. Like, you would think they could say, yeah, Audre Lorde. And I disagree with that. No, they don't know. And so I also want to let you know, too, we're doing another one this November for Tony K. Bambara.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my. And I actually am co-editing that with Aisha, and we're reaching out to people now. And I think it's important. You know, I always, whenever I do any kind of public, I mean, of course, you have to do it in your scholarship, but even when I was on NPR or when I'm doing something mass mediated, I try to reference at least 2 or 3 of my black feminist foremothers because we take for granted that these are names people know. People don't know Frances Beale. People don't know, you know, the Donna Hayden, Donna Middleton. People, I mean, Patricia Hayden. People don't know Abby Lincoln. People don't know. And I don't want people to know me more than they know them. It's disrespectful. I think it's sad. Like, so that's what. So when you talk about matrilineal, when you talk about the matrilineal way that we've sort of, I don't know how you would say it, but like our reverence for our form. That's one of the things. Kimberly Springer has a great article. I think it's Kimberly Springer about the differences between white third wave feminism and black. And people always like call me a third waver or and I'm not. I've never have been. I've never said that ever. Black feminist, period, point blank. But I love that her article talks about the way in which white third wave white feminists have a sort of way of like rejecting the mother. That black doesn't, except for Rebecca Walker, Alice Walker's daughter. You know, there's
it's tragic, actually, tragic.
And you know, Aisha and I have been talking about doing a motherhood forum, and that is one of the reasons why we want, if we do it, we want to be so careful because, I mean, you want to be honest without creating tragedy and trauma for your mother or your daughter. So, but we respect. At the Feminist Wire, we respect our foremothers and want to honor them any chance we get. So that's where that came from. I mean, it's Audre. I mean, I don't mean to be corny, but like I have her tattooed on me. Like, like I love her, and So it was just a no-brainer for me. Like, of course, I'll do anything. I'll sit up and post essays all night if I.
One of my very last questions is, given the short time that you were in Germany, but you do know much more now about Black German feminism, about about the Black German movement, about Black German women, their everyday lives. How, in your view, how would you say that how they are perhaps using a matrilineal heritage that they inherited from Audre? I'm going to be so bold and say that Black women here in Germany, we've inherited from her too. And so how did you see this inheritance being used?
Well,
if something comes to mind.
I think, I mean, it was amazing. It was touching to feel that love for her, because I knew about it, but I hadn't experienced it. You know, I mean, I knew that she was in Berlin a lot, but it was, to be there and to hear people say things like, if it weren't for her, and I mean, I could say that too, but I never met the woman. She died when I was a baby.
Mm-hmm.
But they could say it and show me a picture with her, like your contribution to the Feminist Wire's forum on Audre Lorde. You spoke about your personal relationship with her, and also your, work. You'd worked together, collaborated together, you translated with her, things like that. And Audre is all over, Berlin and Germany. And I wish, you didn't ask me, but I wish my Aim was like that here. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, we don't even know who she is. I didn't know who she was.
Well, perhaps you can contribute to making her know. I mean, but there are circles in the United States about Black German studies.
Yes.
Perhaps not Colorado, but there are circles. There are scholarly circles where people,
yes.
Have really done her work. But as I said, I don't know about the situation in the Midwest.
Well, Tiffany Florville, for instance.
Yeah.
In
Tiffany's writing also a piece for our publication, and I'm editing this gender and diaspora section. Tiffany is submitting a piece for that, which I'm really excited about.
She and I connected on Facebook, and I just think she is I can't wait to meet her in person. Like you could just, it's crazy. I don't even want to go there with the social media, but there's something, it seems like really cool people. I mean, she was really open to me, really friendly, really welcoming, and I think she is definitely a champion of this kind of thinking and this kind of work, making those connections and maintaining those connections, just even on a personal level, what I mean? Not just about let's do this article together and never talk again ever, you know what I mean? But I do appreciate sharing that love and respect for Audre Lorde's life, work, and legacy with people in Berlin. I mean, I love that she meant so much to us and and still does, and continues to mean so much to Black women in Germany, especially. So you
would say that what you would see at the aspect of what they've inherited is the aspect of love, which I really, really like, because Bell Hooks has written a really wonderful book about love in the Black community, or the African American. I will say Black because I will say not just, although perhaps she was, speaking for or basing her ideas on what happened in African America, but I think it pertains to the entire diaspora. And I love this aspect of love because in terms of scholarly articles, or when you're thinking about or when you're theorizing, the aspect of love is usually left aside. It's something that is not really given much not credence to or importance to, or that's not something that you can really use as part of a theory. And I really, really love the idea that Bell Hooks talks about this. But then what you're mentioning now, that this idea of love, and I'm gonna that's gonna be part of the article. So thank you for that.
Oh, I'm so glad. I mean, you know, we did a love forum at the Feminist Wire, Love is a Radical Act, and it was hard for me to do because, I mean, at first I co-edited it with Darnell Moore, who's just brilliant. I don't even know what else to say about him, but we.
Oh, that's the Darnell I see on your Facebook all the time. Okay. Give him my regards.
He's amazing. I mean, I can't even. He's like from another planet, but he's. It just always comes from a place of love and a place of peace and a place of resolution and a place of understanding. And he wanted to do this forum, and I did too. And then right when I agreed to write the conclusion to the Love as a Radical Act forum, and right when I was about to write it, the Zimmerman verdict came out. And I was like, Darnell, I will not be doing any love, nothing, because no, there is no love. I'm not doing it. And he's like, I understand, you know, I get it, but I did it, you know, I did it. And Audre's work was really important for me to be able to do that. Martin Luther King's work was really important for me to do that. Bell Hooks's, and not because these are softies, you know, these are some of the sharpest critical thinkers of our time. I don't know why people still to this day think Martin Luther King was all about, like, you know, laying down as a doormat for white folk. I don't know why people think that. But, you know, that's another person who gets boiled down to, like, these greeting cards, like, I have a dream. But that was really important. Their work. It just, I don't know. I felt the love for Audre Lorde in Berlin. It was powerful and it was important, and I'm so glad to have had the opportunity through the Feminist Wire to recognize that, and also through my course. So, you know, that, yeah, it was great. I hope I get to do it again and again and again and again.
Yeah, well, that's the end of my questions, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your time and your energy with this interview. And with your permission, we're going to post this on the DFG website, well, BDG, Black Diaspora and Germany Scholars website, and so that others can have access to it. And of course, you can also use this for your students or whatever. And is there any? Do you have any closing comments you'd like to share with us before we sign off?
Well, I don't, but I do want to thank you so much for being from the beginning of my from the start of my relationship building with Blacks in Germany. You've been really open and helpful and welcoming and just sweet and honest and supportive, and I'm learning even more as I get older not to take those things for granted. And I also want to thank again the BDG for creating such a an important space, and for allowing people like me to engage the space and to learn more about the amazing work everybody's doing. So this is just a big thank you for my close.
Okay. You also got to speak with another one of my colleagues,
Maya. Yeah, Maya Figure.
She invited Maya also to give a lecture on her work.
Yes, she talked about, you know, I mentioned in the beginning of the video that I'm interested in critical whiteness studies. I teach critical whiteness studies here at Colorado College, and when I found her on the site, I think I might have actually Googled critical whiteness, and I did because I was so hurt that there had been like a conference a few years ago, and I didn't know anything about it, and it was on critical whiteness or critical race theory, and Kimberly Crenshaw and some people were in Berlin, and I was just thinking, you know, Berlin is just too much, got so much going on. I need to live there. But I mean, but Maya's work on whiteness was, I was intrigued, and I wanted to hear, I wanted to learn more about how critical whiteness is being theorized and taught and studied, and she really helped me start to do that. So that was a real treat for the students to get, and for me too. Yeah, and I found her from the network too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Maya's also going to be she's going to also have a contribution to the publication, so you'll get to read some of her stuff. And I'm not sure she's writing in German or English. I have to look at
Right.
we've made a
Right.
list of how we're going to, we made, laid down a blueprint about how the book is going to look.
Oh,
But I'm sure she'll be, if she's writing her text in German, I'm sure she'll be more than happy then and to make a summary in English to send it to you and
oh
for you
yeah.
to be able to read.
Yes. I mean, so many people have been so, and you know, I went to a Daima talk at Frauenkreise, and another one too that was supposed to be in German, and they were like, oh, we'll do English, you know, as much as we can for you if you want to come. And so, you know, I mean, yeah, Germans are tough, but so sweet and so welcoming too. Like, I mean, it's just, I know I was treated like family. You know, once I got there, even before, like with you, and that was, you know, I won't ever take that for granted, ever.
Well, it was a delight, Heidi, to meet you and your students. You have some amazing students. That was a fantastic day. It's a day that I'll never forget. And thank you also for this opportunity to have given a lecture and also to do this interview with you right now. And as I said, this material can be shared between us both. And thank you for your time and for your energy. And we'll definitely be in touch.
Yes, we will. Thank you, Cassandra.